Welcome to Innovating Leadership, Co-Creating Our Future. I'm your host, Maureen Metcalf, founder and CEO of the Innovative Leadership Institute. Today, I am joined by Josh Freedman, a returning guest and one of the world's leading experts on emotional intelligence. Josh is the CEO and co-founder of 6 Seconds. Josh, welcome back. I am delighted to have you with us.
I'm thrilled to be here. I wish it was a more sunny and optimistic time in the world.
I do as well, and I will trust that you will bring us sunshine. How's that for a high bar?
Sounds good.
Let's start with the emotional elephant in the room. With the recent uptick of political violence, according to The Economist, people are left feeling shocked, anxious, and emotionally raw. From your perspective, what does this moment reveal about our collective emotional state?
Well, our research shows that we're pretty deep into an emotional recession. And I think that the political violence, the polarization, increased loneliness, increased stress levels are all part of that emotional recession. And in this state, people are paying a hidden tax on every interaction, every communication. The political violence, I think, is an outgrowth of the instability that we're experiencing in the world more broadly and in our businesses.
And so you say an emotional tax. Can you build on that a little bit?
Well, if you think about every interaction, there's some emotional work in that interaction. Are we aligned? Do we agree? Have you committed? Did you RSVP to that meeting? I just did an event recently at Climate Week, and we had 92 people confirmed, committed, yes, RSVP, and 40 of them didn't show up. That means I had to work harder to build that engagement. I had to follow up with people more often. I had to interact. I had to do more interaction than I normally would. This is true with every employee I interact with, every customer I interact with, every investor, every ally, every friend, my own children. Everywhere in my day, I'm having to do a little more emotional work statistically than I did 5 years ago. And that is draining. That's work. And our organizational leaders are not necessarily equipped to do that work. And we're feeling it. We're feeling the heaviness of it.
You talk about in your State of the Heart report showing a multi-year decline in emotional intelligence globally. And I assume this is connected to the tax. What are the implications of this for business leaders trying to maintain productivity and well-being?
It means if you are putting out X level of energy towards having a positive, trust-based, connected workforce, if you're putting out the same X that you put out in 2019, your results are lower today. So if we think about emotional interaction like building an aligned, trust-based, connected team, that takes emotional work. And today, on average, you have to do more to get the same level of output that compared to 5 years ago. And so that means that in every space and place, every communication, every meeting, every event that you're doing, every sales pitch, it's going to be a little harder to close the deal. It's going to be a little harder to get the commitment. It's going to be a little harder to build that agreement. It's going to be a little harder to solve that disagreement. That means that in our organizations, it's both harder and more urgent to do the emotional intelligence work.
Harder and more urgent. Do leaders have the capacity to do that work?
What I've seen in our surveys and what I've seen anecdotally and what I've seen for myself is the answer is not really. Because we are also depleted.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you, I mean, even as somebody who has quite a lot of training in kind of the emotional part of leadership, I find talking to employees doing more kind of firefighting, doing more counseling, but more challenging conversations than 5 years ago. And I did a little just poll about this and found something like 8% of people in my poll said they had sufficient skills and training for the emotional challenges that they were facing at work.
Aside from your assessment and going through your program, where do people get that training? It sounds like they're not getting it from parents. they're not getting it from their schools, or we would have a higher percentage of people who have it.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is really the heart of the issue, Maureen, is there's a deficit. And we can see in many different research papers kind of showing these gaps between what we need in our workplaces and what we have. I think a lot of people are turning to AI, which I recently gave a bunch of AI tools our emotional intelligence assessment to see what happened. And AI is not very emotionally intelligent. It's smart about a lot of things, but it's not good with emotions. And I think part of the challenge is that most of us kind of look around and go, wow, there's a lot of emotional challenge, but there's not a lot of emotional superstars out there. So I would say, the answer is often coaching, going through training, reading, talking to your wife, find somebody who sees things that you don't see and say, help me understand what's going on. Paying attention. My experience with senior leaders is they're really good at solving problems. It's just a question of saying, okay, this is a problem I'm going to work on solving.
In my work, I will often say, because I'm working with engineers or physicians or senior executives, often with technical backgrounds, if you can learn to be a physician, you can learn emotional intelligence. It is a learnable skill. Some people may be born with a lot more of it or raised with a lot more of it, but just because you're an engineer doesn't give you a pass. There is a recent Harvard Business Review article, most common uses of AI right now, and they are human interaction type replacements. They're not synthesis of data.
Yeah. And I think that, like all tools, right? If you try to pound nails in with a screwdriver, it's just not that effective. We need to make sure we're using the right tool for any job. AI, its strength is not in emotions. Its strength is not in wisdom and insight beyond what's obvious. Its strength is in organizing data, in synthesizing, in simplifying, in seeing patterns. Most of the AIs that we're using, these LLMs, I mean, they work through predictive tokens where they're kind of making this average, like frequently this phrase comes after this phrase. The AI doesn't have meaning to the AI. It's a pattern. Emotions are tremendously complex, and we have millions of years of practice as a species to kind of tune in and connect with these emotions. So what I would say is this rise in AI is probably a great opportunity for EI to say, look, we are going to put certain tasks in this AI bucket, but we're going to make sure that the human things that humans really do well and do better than AI, that we make sure that we're getting good at that.
It completely makes sense that we use the tools to do what they're best at and don't use tools to do things that they are ineffective at.
Right? Allocation of resources, right? Human resources or AI resources or whatever. Use the right tool for the job.
Let's go back to the business case for emotional intelligence, because I think regrounding, we started with violence. I think the example you gave, we are expending more energy to get the same output. So they are more tired, which leads to a little more overwhelm, a little less clarity.
Yeah, in simple terms, way of people connecting and engaging, which we could call the organizational culture and climate, is shaped by your leaders. It's something that you can intentionally build. And this context, what it's like to come to work and the way our norms and the way we interact with each other affects the way people get results. Just like we can tune up, I don't know, a manufacturing process and use, lean and go, okay, let's measure these places where we're wasting and we're out of tolerance and we're kind of leading to the wrong results in our manufacturing. We can do the same thing in our emotional context, the human experience of work. What's it like on Sunday night when you think about coming to work? What happens on Monday morning? Where are we squandering emotional capital? Where are we optimizing? Where are we introducing drag into this system? Where are we making it harder for people to come together and solve problems and make decisions? Where are we making it harder to build trust with our customers? Let's get the skills in place to be able to notice those things and fix those things. And because we're talking about this sort of emotional equations, the skills are emotional intelligence. So basically, the more complex the emotional challenge, the more emotional intelligence we need. If you're in a more relational business, if you're in a business that's got rapid change and transformation, if you're dealing with a lot of human interaction points, if customer experience is really important to you, if innovation is really important to you, or if you're trying to hold on to your workforce, or you're facing these sort of human challenges, that tells you the antidote is going to be growing emotional intelligence in the organization.
You offer a brilliant assessment that is much more complex than some of the rudimentary things. When we're talking about leaders and helping leaders evolve, can you share maybe a few examples of things that have worked more through the lens of case study?
Yeah, there's a case study that we just published with one of the world's biggest logistics companies. One of the things that we found, 81,000 people worldwide, 1,300 offices. One of the things that we found is that when they embedded emotional intelligence across the leadership teams, that started to change organizational dynamics, and that started to lead to employees reporting that they observed differences in the way that managers responded. At that same time frame, operational effectiveness improved 66%. So what we're seeing is there's a link between managers growing these capabilities that transmits into the organization, that creates more operational efficiency. It totally makes sense, right? Like if you think across this organization, we're going to have managers who are better with people. People feel that and they notice it. And then that leads to a smoother workflow. I kind of equate it to putting oil in your engine. You've got this machine, whether it's in your car or your manufacturing plant, right? You've got this machine and the little red light is blinking and there's smoke coming out. Nobody who knows anything about machines is going to go, oh, I'm just going to ignore that. Right? And you're like, no, let me add oil. Let me do something. Let's get the temperature down. Let's get this thing working smoothly. And so the same thing is happening on the people side. We're seeing the smoke, it's coming out of people's ears. The complexity is just, it feels really complex for people right now. We need to add oil to the system. And in this case, the oil is the skills that every leader can develop to be better with the emotional side. I'll tell you one more tiny case study. UCB pharmaceutical company, did EQ training for their managers. Their field reps, they didn't train the field reps. The field reps started interacting differently with customers. What I love about that case is that it reinforces our theory of change, which is that when people start developing these skills themselves, that changes the way they interact with others and that ripples out into the system. And in this UCB Pharma case, just training the sales managers led them to interact differently with their employees, which led those field reps to build stronger relationships with customers. This is one of the reasons why growing emotional intelligence has a very high ROI.
Yeah, I'm working with a manufacturing firm. We're doing leadership work, culture work, system work. I would say I've seen something very similar when we embed a different way of working with our teams. It's not just the leaders who change, it is the entire organization.
I look at it from the lens of trust. So trust is the emotion that's connected to safety, psychological and physical safety, right? So when I feel trust, it means I'm perceiving their safety. We can measure trust. We can measure trust in a team. We can measure trust in an organization. And we can measure a leader's capacity to engender trust. Kind of a new definition that I would suggest is that a leader's job is trust.
There are lots of trust equations. You've done the research. What engenders trust from employees to leaders?
We have developed a set of what we call pulse points that are indicators of key aspects of performance. And so we have 3 pulse points for trust. Transparency, I think, is pretty straightforward. We're going to share the information. Maybe not share everything, but we're going to share a little more. And we're going to not try to kind of play our cards quite so close to our vest. An example of this is you have a company that's going through economic difficulty. Everyone knows it. You see this group of senior managers walking through the office, and they just been in a meeting planning a reduction in force. And you can see it on their faces, and everyone sees it. And then you go up to those people and you say, "Hey, is everything okay?" "Oh, yeah, yeah, everything's fine." Right? And you know it's not fine. Trust just went dropped. So that's transparency. Coherence is a maybe more unusual concept. It's about walking the talk. Is there a match between what you do in this room and what you do in that room? Are they coherent? Is there a match between what you say on Tuesday and what you say on Wednesday? And this kind of predictability, and interestingly, you don't have to be like the most warm, empathic, caring person to build trust. If you're like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, right? People are like, well, which version of Josh am I going to get today? That really diminishes trust. If you're like, yeah, Josh is kind of a little task focused and sometimes over analytical and he pushes, but he's like that with everyone. Don't take it personally. People will still trust you if you have the other two. So, and the third one is care. And I think this is the place where, which is hard for a lot of organizations. Fundamentally, trust is about, do you have my back? There's an emotional experience that's part of trust. I mean, we could use the word love. I think care is a little more comfortable in workplaces, but do you actually care about the people who work for you? Do you actually care about this work? Do you actually care about your colleagues? Again, it's one of these things where everyone knows it. It's so deep in our DNA to assess this because we are pack animals. This is a matter of survival. So even if you're not consciously using your emotional intelligence, this is happening in the background and you are assessing every interaction through this lens of trust, and care as part of it. Does this person have my back? Do I matter as a person? One of the things that I found wonderful about working with leaders all over the world is most leaders genuinely care about their people, and they genuinely care about the work, and they genuinely care about their customers. Sometimes we forget to kind of bring that forward, but I've seen it there over and over and over.
What would you advise those leaders?
What I always start with is, do you actually care? Like, is there something about this person? Is there something about this team? Is there something about this work that you actually care about? I can hardly think of a time in the last 28 years where somebody said, no, I just really don't care. There have been a couple, but sometimes it's like, well, I don't like this about this person. I don't like this about this. Okay, but is there anything you like? Yes, there is. Right. And so like we get beneath that surface stuff. And yes, I actually do. Like, there is something I genuinely like about this person. So starting by tapping into that, there's a little exercise that I do sometimes with in coaching, which I call authentic appreciation, which is when you're annoyed with somebody, you don't have to say anything. You don't have to do anything with anybody else, but just by yourself, just sit there and list the things you appreciate about the person and just go through it and just like keep circling back through things you appreciate about the person for 2 minutes. Even if it's just there are only 3 things I can think of, but just keep kind of looping through those. And what happens is you'll feel this physical shift. And it's like the barking dogs of your annoyance will get quieter. And it's fascinating how appreciation and gratitude create this physiological shift in us.
I was talking to someone who was preparing for a difficult conversation. And he was going through all the scenarios of, when this goes wrong, I'll do this. When this goes wrong, I'll do that. And he hadn't considered that there would be a positive scenario. Like, what do you do when they do this well? What do you do when you say this wasn't working well? And they say, yeah, you're right. That's been worrying me too. Thank you for bringing it up. Instead of saying, shut up, you idiot.
I mean, nobody sets out, like nobody's starting out their day saying, you know what, I want to ruin Maureen's day today, right? Like it's not how people are wired.
That's good news.
Yeah, it's good news. There is something this person cares about. There is alignment. It's like there's some friction, but underneath that, there's a lot of common ground. And so I think we can lean into that common ground. We can lean into what we both care about. We can lean into finding, that sort of shared space. And then great things can happen.
Going back even to the political violence and a world that seems incredibly fractured, but I do move the needle with the people I interact with. Even when I'm meeting with someone with whom I have a bumpy interaction, or my last interaction was bumpy, even though I really appreciate them, finding a path to be grateful about who they are. How do I remember to be my best self when I walk into those interactions?
The president of 6 Seconds, Annabelle Jensen, points out that we leave emotional traces in every interaction. There's a little ripple effect that we create in every interaction. So one of the questions that I encourage people to think about is, what is the trace you want to leave? You're going to go into this meeting's going to be over, and after this meeting, this person is going to be affected by you. What is the result you're looking for? Is it, that they want to crawl under their desk and cry? You probably want to lift something up. Now, you may want them to change. You may want them to stop doing some behavior. You may want them to start doing more of some other behavior. But probably you're trying to improve their results and your shared results. You're probably trying to help them. Is you just think strategically and you say, okay, I want the green ball to go into that corner pocket. And so I'm going to hit the white ball. I'm going to interact with this person, right? I'm going to interact with this person in a way that's going to lead to that ripple. I'm a terrible pool player, but I like this metaphor of like, okay, all you do in pool is hit the white ball, right? That's the only thing you do. You hit the white ball and something happens, right? But you have to be thinking, what do I want to have happen next? What do you want to have happen next? What this person goes home at the end of the day. How do you want them to be talking about this conversation? This person comes into work tomorrow. How do you want them to be showing up? You get to influence that. And the cool thing, Maureen, is we have a million chances every day to practice this. And we get to watch in real time. And we go, oh, that didn't land right. Oh, that person is kind of it's gotten heavier. And I wanted it to get lighter and it got heavier. I'm going to try again. And just look at this opportunity of leadership as an opportunity to have the ripple effect that you want, and try it out and try it out and try it out until you get good at it.
I'll say something and often I think I'm funny or I think I'm uplifting and I see the slump. And I'll say real time, like your reaction did not match what I thought I was saying in my head. So, reel it back. Let's try over again. What did you hear me say? Because I thought I was being funny and uplifting. Being in genuine relationship and being able to say, oh, your expression not matched with what I was trying to do. Or I'm giving constructive feedback and someone looks distraught.
Yep.
Being willing to open the door to a deeper conversation. Like, I want you to hear the tough feedback.
And in the context that we're in, I think this is where this becomes so crucial, is that people's barometer is set to a higher threat level. You deliver a message that you thought was kind of mild criticism, and they're like, whoa, I'm devastated by that. Partly that's the relationship that you have. Partly that's you. Partly maybe you didn't do that great a job. But partly it's that the world that we're in is leaving them discombobulated. They're in this place of disequilibrium. And you just look, I'm in New York right now. And so like walking down the street, like you see thousands of people. A lot of them are dysregulated, right? On average, they're less regulated than 5 years ago. And that means that this careful attention to the impact that we're having and saying, oh, okay, it might not be, my intention might be X, but that might not be the impact that I'm having. And I need to calibrate in this circumstance, in this context. I need to calibrate, and probably I need to dial back a little bit of the intensity of my communication.
Circling back to AI and what's different between 5 years ago, we do have these tools that help us do some things. How I interact with humans has become more important. My skill in having a genuine conversation, in showing care, all of these things have become more important. When I run into most people who are showing slightly more disequilibrium than they did, if I want to be a good leader, I need to up my skills.
I think a lot of us feel stuck and a little helpless in this. It's like, why can't people just get it together?
Yeah, why can't they, Josh?
Well, and if they could, they would have, right? If they could, they would have, because
Yeah,
they
yeah.
don't want to be in this place either. It is incumbent on all of us to say, okay, we need to work a little bit harder. And it doesn't mean you need to be a therapist, but you just need to lean in a little bit more to being a decent human being and just put a little bit more energy into this relational domain, knowing that, people have more rocks in their backpack. They're going to need a little bit more help getting up the mountain.
It does raise the bar for me to be a better human being. And working with each of my clients, I need to model the better human being part before I can coach anyone else to do that.
Well, one of the things this has brought up for me is a decision to write a new book. I was really hesitant to write another book. It's my 8th book, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to get into this whole thing again. And you know what it's like. But I made the decision to write this book, and I'm writing about things I've never written about before. I'm writing a lot more about my own struggle with emotions and how I've used spiritual traditions from all around the world to help me become more grounded, to help me become more present, to help me be a little bit more of a person who I want to be. So the book really kind of digs deep into, how do we meet the moment? How do we equip ourselves to not be blown by these winds? How do we kind of stand strong in our values and principles and caring? And part of that is doing more self-regulation, doing more work on ourselves, deepening our self-awareness. And one of the things I talk a lot about in the book is this idea of being more present, being more fully here. And I think in this context that we're talking about, there's so much tumultuousness. It's easy to withdraw. It's easy to just be overwhelmed by what's going on. And yet, if we're going to show up as leaders, it's incumbent on us to step forward. That's what leaders do.
I love that you're connecting with values and spiritual traditions. I think anyone who listens regularly knows that I have become maniacal about yoga. I mean, I can walk into the studio feeling angry, hurt, whatever. And typically, I walk out feeling better.
When we're in this place of overwhelm and when we're buffeted by the storm, right, we need to find a place we can stand. And we need allies, and we need to be allies.
Mhm.
We need to be leaders worth following. And I think connecting to what's most important to us as human beings, connecting to these thousands of years of tradition of, how do you show up as a better human being? Whatever your faith is, whatever your spiritual journey is, whatever your values are, leaning into those, living into those, making that more a part of your day to day. That's going to help you be more trustworthy. That's going to help you be more authentic. That's going to help you be more stable in this chaos. And earlier I said, maybe our new definition of leadership is a process of trust building. Maybe implicit in that, in this tumultuous time, part of trust building is more stability. Part of what people are looking to you for is to say, I need somebody to lean on because things are feeling really chaotic right now. And, what if every person listening, we, and you and me, like we each show up tomorrow being a little bit more of that rock in the river, that little stabilizing force, that little bit more trustworthy. And then the ripple effect of that little bit more trustworthiness builds more safety, builds more alignment, builds it's a breath. People can take a breath when they're in our presence.
Would you share one anecdote that inspired you to write the book?
I was recently in Mallorca with a group of EQ practitioners from all around the world, and we were talking about our clients and what's going on and what people need. And I was thinking about writing a book about coaching, and I said to one of my colleagues, Maria Elena, who's a master coach, I kind of want to write this book about coaching, but I'm feeling this sense of the fragility in the world. It's like practical to write a book about coaching, but this other book is calling me. And she said, why are you saying it's not practical? Every single client that I talk to is struggling with is the emotional part of their work. If people could just have a little bit more clarity about emotions, so much would change. Little spark really helped me go, okay, well, what if this book is what people need? And I do this, Maureen, when I do a keynote or whatever, I kind of look around the room and I go, okay, I just need one person to need this. If I can just help one person in this room, I can get through this. Like, I am a little introverted. So like going out and speaking and doing, putting myself out there, but like I can help one person just connect a little bit more. And so that conversation with Maria Elena just kind of opened up that door for me to say, yeah, people need this right now.
And that takes us full circle to what's kind of the collective consciousness. We've got the political violence and all that stuff, but we've also got the collective group of people who are struggling. This is why you're the sunshine, Josh. You're looking across the horizon at the collective challenge and finding.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, looking at 1,000,000 assessments and seeing this startling decline across the world, across generations, across gender, across age, across roles, and saying, wow, we have to do something. We have to dig deeper and find solutions. And I am optimistic that we can do this. And the great thing is, just a little improvement makes a tremendous difference in people's lives, and it makes a tremendous difference in your business. So again, the ROI is there. These are learnable, measurable skills that have value for your business, they have value for you as a human being, they have value for the people around you. So this, to me, it's a slam dunk, right? Like this is the moment to lean into growing and practicing our emotional intelligence skills.
Beautiful. I'm not even going to try to do another wrap up because what you just said is perfect. Josh, thank you for such an insightful conversation. So how would listeners learn more about you and the 6 Second Group?
Well, I would love to connect on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out to me. 6seconds.org is our main website, and there's lots of articles and free resources and case studies and tons of information there if you want to learn more about emotional intelligence. And the new book is Emotion Rules.
Beautiful. Thank you. Again, thank you for the conversation, especially as timely as it is right now.
I'm so grateful for the opportunity to share and connect with folks, and appreciate you bringing this out there.
Oh, yeah. And for our listeners, thank you for joining us. Please like, subscribe, and share this content broadly. Josh's message is so crucial right now.